I have invested over $150 million on behalf of our clients and my family over the years, and we have a top tier track record. We're very proud of it, but it hasn't always gone smoothly. And so today I thought we'd go through some of my nightmares and talk about those, because there is this notion out there that real estate is super easy. It's this mailbox money where you just sit back and you collect the rent checks, but it is the furthest thing from passive. It is a highly operationally intensive business. So today we're going to cover my top 10 real estate nightmares. And I'm looking at this list and I'm already nervous looking at 8 because I just don't even want to think about it because it was such a nightmare. All right, so here we go. Number 1. Had a home in Texas that was hit by a tornado. It was one of those things where you got the notice, you saw the news that a tornado was coming through Austin, and you're thinking, oh, well, that's awful, but it's not going to hit my home. There's no way. What are the odds? Of course, it hit the home. It completely ripped off the roof. That was a $50,000 bill. The insurance company only wanted to pay about $12,000 for it. Had to fight them. Eventually got them up to about 22 and had to cover the rest. So that was a 3-month fun experience to get that home back into rentable shape. Number 2, had another single family home where the tenants decided they were going to start breeding dogs, even though dogs were not allowed, of course, in the rules. This was an out-of-state property for us, so we weren't there. We didn't know exactly how many animals they had at any given time, and the dogs ended up tearing apart this 4,000 square foot home to the point where nobody wanted to come into the house because of the odor. So that was good times. Number 3, we had another tenant problem where a nice lady turned into a hoarder, and she basically just had trash everywhere. She eventually abandoned the home, and we had to hire some hazmat people, literally hazmat suits, to come through and get rid of all of the garbage. Number 4, we had a hurricane hit a property in Florida. That was not horrible damage to the property. The property was okay. It was about $10,000 of damage, but it was a really scary, nervous 24 hours kind of watching this giant circle on the screen head directly to the town our property was in. Number 5, we had a brand new house. We thought that we were going to go up market on rents, get a higher quality tenant that makes a lot of money, and hopefully they would take care of the property. And we found an attorney. She was single. She went to Ivy League schools. Just a great application. Then 30 days later, the police department contacted us and said that they had been to the house about 20 times. Apparently, our nice Ivy League tenant had her boyfriend, who was in a biker gang, started selling drugs out of the house, and they were hitting golf balls. This was fun. They were hitting golf balls on the top of the roof at the other neighbors in the community and causing damage. So that was good times. And because she was a lawyer, she was a professional tenant, and she was able to drag out the eviction process. So that one had multiple issues. Number 6, we got sued for having a 1-inch curb. And so somebody said they weren't able to access the property management office because of this 1-inch curb. Of course, they had a professional ambulance chasing lawyer helping them out, and they were sending out lawsuits across town for the similar 1-inch curb violations. To make that go away and not go to trial, we settled, which is extremely frustrating to do. But once you actually have to go to court, you want to try to avoid it. Number 7, we had a property with a lift station. And what this is you have utilities underground that deliver utilities, water, sewer, to the city services. And if your pipes are going uphill, you somehow have to get all of that uphill. And here we had the lift station, which is basically a pump fail. Then there's alarms going off. There is black water overflow everywhere. Not nice. And the environmental department, the EPA, is sending you nasty letters, and you are spending a lot of money on cleanup crews, getting rid of hazardous materials, which is just a scary thing to be dealing with the EPA and the threat of environmental lawsuits. Okay, number 8, this is the doozy. I was on vacation. It just landed with my family. Very excited to take a break and relax. And landed, opened up my phone, and I had 50 messages. That's never fun. 50 voicemails from property managers, from city officials, from tenants, and from the governor's office of New York, which was interesting. So what had happened, the property was next to a river. It was not in a flood zone, but it was very cold. The river froze, created an ice dam. I'd never even heard of an ice dam. An ice dam that blocked water and flowed it right into our property. So the property was completely destroyed, and a lot of people upset. A lot of people were displaced. It was a very unfortunate situation that took years to try to solve and millions of dollars to try to fix. And it never really got back to the same state before the flood. The state of New York put a nice cherry on top by suing us 5 years later because they had reached the statute of limitations on being able to sue us for an environmental issue that may or may not have happened. They thought, well, possibly there could have been heating oil that would have spilled into the river from this flood. That was kicking a man when he was down. Thankfully, we settled that one for small dollars, but it was pretty interesting to get that letter in the mail after an unfortunate event. All right, number 9. So we had great employees. 99% of them were fantastic, but we had one bad apple that was stealing from us. They essentially were not telling us about new leases they were signing, and they were having the tenants pay them directly instead of the company, which is good times. That's why you don't ever collect cash, by the way. You make everybody use debit cards. But this person was stealing for quite some time. They had developed a bit of a gambling problem. And of course, we could have contacted the authorities. I think most people recommend doing that, but we just parted ways. And so that was an interesting project, trying to figure out why we were not making as much money relative to the rent roll, and then dealing with the employee once we figured out what was happening. And then number 10 here, we had one property, bit of a mystery asset, that we started getting $30,000 water bills, which had previously been about $5,000. And so this property was on 10 acres. There was a lot of places for the water to be leaking. And we just assumed, okay, well, that's a bummer 1 month bill, but we will be able to get to the bottom of this. We had crews come out there. They had these listening scopes to try to figure out, okay, where's the water leaking? We'll just patch it up. And for the life of us, we could not find this water leak. And so we kept having to beg the city to give us an adjustment to the bills, but these $30,000, $40,000 bills just kept coming. And so finally we figured out that it was just these tiny pinhole leaks all over the property that were creating these problems, and had to completely replace all of the water pipes, which was a nice $300,000 bill. So anyways, once again, the majority of the time, things were pretty normal. You're collecting rents, you're driving your business plan, you're creating some profits, but a lot of times bad surprises pop up and you're having to deal with headaches, and certainly things that are not passive in nature. And so I got to the point where I've sold all the properties and transitioned that capital into more passive investments where we can benefit from the income without having to do the actual operations and deal with these kind of problems. And we highly recommend that for all of our clients as well. And so if that sounds compelling, there's resources down below for income that doesn't require your time or patience for some of these problems that we've gone over today. So check out below, Evergreen Capital. Thanks for watching.